Thanks for joining me, Wendy. Wendy, if we could start like with everyone else, your early days. I understand you're from Northland. What was early life and whānau life like for you?
I'm actually Tauiwi. So my family came here in 1971 when I was a tiny little baby, and from England. And so I grew up in an immigrant family, which living in Aotearoa is interesting because whānau and whānaunga is so important here to everybody within this culture, and we're a very small family. My entire family is here, both of them over there. And so we were this tiny little family surrounded by people with very big families. So I didn't have aunties and cousins and whatnot, and that's a double-edged sword because I could see everybody else had these huge families, but I did not. However, not having aunties, you can get away with quite a lot more. And the other thing was that we ended up doing a lot of things for ourselves as a family. So very early on, it was instilled in me that if you want something done, you do it yourself. You learn how to do it, and you go out and you do it. So I kind of grew up with that philosophy, and we moved around a lot. We didn't have very much money, and our family washed up in Te Tai Tokerau, basically seeking the warmth. They were from Yorkshire, and we came to a South Pacific island, and they got a bit of a shock when it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So they moved further and further north and eventually settled in Dargaville, where they convinced me to go to university. I was always an opinionated kid, which people translated as a brainy kid, and so they said, you should go to university, so I did. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I flunked out of Waikato in 1989, which ironically was the first year they started charging fees to go to university. And so I went back to Dargaville and lived as a bogan for a while. And
It's good. That's good life experience.
It was definitely an experience. I got to see a lot of the impacts of drug policy. For example, the economy at the time basically ran on cannabis cash, and I was there in the 90s when that was gradually changing over to methamphetamine. So I saw the impact of the enforcement of cannabis law on what was actually happening to people, and I thought, well, that's not right. And it took me a while to get it together because, you know, bogan. But eventually I ended up in Wellington, with an understanding of drug law and a desire to do something about it. And at about the same time, the BZP party pills got banned. And at that time, I kind of went, oh, I can see what's going to happen here. They're all going to end up in the illicit market, and people are going to be buying them and taking them thinking they're taking something else. And I learned about drug checking at that time, and I was like, well, this is a brilliant idea. Why are we not doing this? But I was nobody, and I didn't think that anybody would listen to me having opinions at them from my position, so I thought I'd better get an education properly, and I finally worked out what I wanted to do, which was go to university. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Yeah, so you ended up, obviously you'd graduated from the University of Bogan, and then you felt that you needed a university degree to be taken seriously, or to add to your mana, or to help?
Yeah, I could see that people with university degrees were the people that were getting listened to, and I knew that nobody would listen to me. I spent 15 years working in sharing gangs, and that was kind of, you know, why should anybody listen to me about drug policy? So I thought I'd go and learn some more about it. So yeah, I studied part-time, one paper per trimester from 2008 to 2013 to do a double major in criminology and social policy. I worked full-time, I was raising my son. It was an interesting time. It was a lot of work.
It's a remarkable achievement. A round of applause for that.
Yeah, at the time, it was just what I was doing. It's like I wanted to do this thing, and so here was the things I had to do to achieve it, and so I did that. But university, what it actually did for me, I think the kudos of having a degree has definitely helped, but what I got from university was, first I developed a much better understanding of the injustices associated with drug law, the way they are applied around the world, but particularly here in Aotearoa, what they do to people. I learnt a lot about that. I learnt about how to build a social movement. And I learnt about the complicity of governments in the perpetuation of these injustices. So there was a whole lot of stuff I learnt, but probably the most important thing I learnt was imposed on me by some of my professors are here. I hope they're not offended, but those ridiculously low word counts. So, so I would sit down to write my essays and I would write 8,000 words and I would have to cut it down to 2,000, and as a result I got good at making concise, clear arguments.
Wow.
And that's probably one of the best things I learned at university.
And, you know, you've started through your mahi national conversations about something that people didn't really want a national conversation about, okay? That, to my mind, takes exceptional leadership qualities. Do you have any advice for other people who want to start a national conversation about things that people don't want started? Because that's what you've done.
Wow, that's really a good question. Part of it is all of the people who have sort of coalesced around Know Your Stuff have been attracted to this idea, and part of that was because it's a no-brainer. It was very, very obvious that this was going to prevent people they cared about from dying, and this came into my awareness the first time I spoke about what I was doing in public. I was pretty sure I was going to get arrested. This was at a festival on stage in front of about 400 people, and instead afterwards I was approached by all of the middle-aged mums in the crowd coming up to me and going, how do we get our teenagers to do this? And so if I had to give advice, it would be get the middle-aged mums on board. I'm not joking. There's a whole lot of stuff about being a middle-aged mum. You care about your kids, you care about your parents. Most people underestimate women of my age, but we're on committees, we're at the rugby team, we talk to people, we listen to people, and if you really want to get your message out, those are the people you need to have on board, in my opinion.
Yeah. And speaking about that, and I spoke about it in the citation as well. You know, you've probably never thought about this, but how many lives do you think you have saved by checking dangerous drugs? Is there any way of even adding that up?
You can't measure it, unfortunately, because that's one of the things I learned at university. What's good evidence? And there is no good evidence there, because how can you prove that something would have happened if you didn't intervene? So we actually built all our evidence around knowing that we couldn't prove that we were saving lives. However, if the response that we got from the Utalone scare in 2021, which was hundreds of people messaging us going, thank you for putting that message out, I didn't take this stuff because of that, is anything to go by, then it's a lot of people.
Yeah, a round of applause for that as well.
Yeah.
And onto the broader picture of drug law reform, which is something I'm interested in as well. You know, it's back to front in a lot of ways in terms of the harm. You know, alcohol is legal and does the most harm, and other drugs like MDMA are very low, but they're highly illegal. The national conversation required to change that, is that something that you can see happening in Aotearoa, New Zealand, or is that too hard?
If I get my way, it'll happen, and it will happen soon. We actually have started this ball rolling already. Know Your Stuff has been doing a series on the Misuse of Drugs Act. You should read it, it's interesting. And today we published an article in which we described the Misuse of Drugs Act as a legislative dumpster fire that needs to be yeeted into the sun. Thanks, Ree. This is the attitude we're taking. It is wrong, it doesn't work, and it needs to go. It needs to be replaced with legislation that is based around well-being, that is based in evidence, and that is administered by a ministry that is not the Ministry of Justice, because at the moment what they're doing is injustice. And so, yeah, I'm on a mission and I'm going to fix that.
And what advice do you have for other people who are mature, is one word, or who are maybe thinking later in life to go to university for the first time or for the second time, but particularly in your case for the first time? You know, what sort of words would you have about what Victoria University did for you, for someone thinking like that?
I would say it's definitely worth doing, because when you study later in life, you know what you want to learn, you know what you want to achieve, and being the annoying adult student that makes all the kids roll their eyes and go, oh God, her again, is actually, you're getting what you want out of doing that, and who cares what they think? You know, it is weird walking into a classroom when everybody's younger than your kid, and acting like you belong there, because there is a certain amount of, hey, why am I here? I'm too old for this. But actually, the tutors and the lecturers really appreciate someone who actually asks questions, and you get what you want by doing that. So, yeah, my advice to anyone considering to go studying at all, anything, is do it.
Do it. Yeah. Well, that seems like a good place to leave this interview. Thank you very much, Wendy.
Thank you.
Very inspiring. Yeah. Awesome. Did you enjoy that?